you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, Chris Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the Iron Lady sings and makes official welcome to 16 years and nearly 3,000 episodes of the Chris Voss Show. We bring you the most amazing minds, the most amazing stories, the most amazing journeys. As always, refer the show to your family, friends, and relatives, or else I'll haunt you at night. No, I'm just kidding. I won't do that. But you're welcome to dream about me. Go to goodreads.com/just Chris Voss, linkedin.com/just Chris Voss. Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today, we have an amazing young lady on the show. She's a multi-book author. We're going to talk about her books. The latest that we'll be leading off with is called Liv's Secrets. It's a novel by Janet Levine, and we're going to find out more about her writing and some of the things she's done and some of the interesting life experiences she's had. Janet has had decades of published writing experience, both as a book author and a freelance journalist. She is the author of 6 published works and more coming. For 29 years, she taught in the English department at Milton Academy in Massachusetts. She leads workshops and presented programs internationally on the psychology of personality using the E model. An anti-apartheid activist, she's an expert on South Africa and South African politics. The founder and leader of several succession nonprofit organizations in South Africa and the United States, she remains a committed activist for human rights. Welcome to the show. How are you, Janet?
I'm doing very well. How are you, Chris?
I am excellent. Thanks for coming. We really appreciate having you.
Yeah, I appreciate being on the show.
So give us a .coms, website, social media, wherever you want people to find out more about you on the web.
Just my name, Janet Levine, with an E.com.
So give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside this book.
Yeah, this book is many years in the making. It's the story of the apartheid era in South Africa between 1880s and 2010, when Nelson Mandela was released from prison and the country assumed a democratic status, sort of. Yeah, I was born in South Africa. I'm a descendant of Jewish immigrants from Lithuania who came into the country in 1880s.
Oh, wow.
When most immigrants from Eastern Europe were leaving Lithuania, Latvia, Poland because of pogroms and slayings and discrimination, they came to America. A small wave of them went to South Africa, and my family was amongst those. Oh. And when I was growing up, I was very much involved with family. We all were, that's what we had. We had ourselves. The Jewish minority was tiny compared to the white minority, which was tiny compared to the black majority. So being a minority within a minority was an interesting political role.
Yeah.
I grew up questioning my elders, who it was their parents. The older they were, it was their parents who were the first immigrants. And I found the story of my family's immigration to be fascinating, and especially their settlement once they arrived in Cape Town and went up to the gold mines and the diamond mines up in the north of the country. And my family, my grandfather actually was one of them. There's 4 brothers. They started a trading store on the diamond mines up in the north of South Africa, in the desert, in what's now Botswana. So my mom was born in Botswana. So that my family is deeply steeped in South African landscapes, South African culture, and also Jewish culture, and trying to find one's identity in that mix was very interesting. I became an activist when I was a young teenager mainly because of my grandfather, who told me that we used to walk around he stayed with us for every year for a while, and we would walk along the golf course, and he would say, looking at the little black caddies, who the golf bags were bigger than they, he would say, that's the real riches of South Africa, not the gold, not anything else. And they're not being educated, and that's going to lead to a huge problem. So I was about 6 or 7, a serious little girl, and I then became very aware of all the differences between me and those little kids, because they had absolutely no rights as human beings. Yeah. And I had every privilege and every chance at education and 3 meals a day and good clothes and vacations. So I really began to question whether I could live in that situation without trying to do something about it.
Yeah.
So, you have a question?
Oh, I was going to ask you, I mean, the Jewish history has faced a lot of persecution over eons of time. And did that maybe make you, have empathy for the underdog, the black people there that were being repressed by apartheid in South Africa?
Yes, I don't think that's universal amongst all Jewish people and the whole Jewish population. In fact, in South Africa, I was one of very few who stood up and resisted. But, but that was the basis of my novel, is that the character of Liv was created because I was in the resistance, although I was much younger than she was portrayed in 1960. And I tried to model her on there were 5 incredible women, black and white, who were very helpful in mentoring me. And they were incredible role models. And I sort of watched them and listened to their stories and became aware of their traumas and their fears. And now that all translated into this character who seems to be really resonating with the American reading public, I'm pleased to say. So Liv grew up as a very wealthy young divorcee, and I won't go into the whole story, but she at university, she met with some young radicals who steered her towards the resistance. It's a good old story. And eventually her house became a safe house for the real resistors, the black people who were leading the resistance against their government in 1960. So I chose the year 1960 because it's a pivotal year in South African history. That's the year of the Sharpeville Massacre, when all black men had to carry a passbook. If they didn't have a passbook, they were put in jail without question.
Wow.
So I just want to make a point here that the population in South Africa, when I'm writing about 1960, there were only 15 million people, of whom 3 million were white and everyone else was black.
Wow.
The 3 million whites had access to golf courses, parks, swimming pools, schools, restaurants, movie houses, a regular sort of North American life, whereas black people were often, I think I coined the phrase, they were really economic robots in the system. They had absolutely no rights. And education was primarily what the UN dictated as 4 years to learn reading, writing, and a little arithmetic.
Wow.
And that was it. And, white children were in school for 12 years and then had access to several different universities. So it's just you couldn't miss the total discrepancy that this very small group absolutely had to use the police and the army as arms of government in order to maintain control. Yeah. And that's what they saw. They saw that if they didn't have control, that it would cease to be a Christian country. So they being the apartheid government, were adamant that that they would keep blacks down, because otherwise they'd be swamped. All whites would be swamped. So the resistance was very appealing to me, because I wanted to share what I had, and I wanted to, as I got more educated, I wanted to share what I'd learned and how I could help people. I'm not a saint, far from it, but I definitely was driven, and my whole life I've been driven by this feeling of learning something and then wanting to share it.
Yeah.
So that's the two arms of the story, the historical, generational story of my family through 3 generations. And then in 1960, the story of Liv and how she goes from being a well-heeled white woman into the resistance. And then, I don't want to spoil again. No spoilers. So, yeah.
And would you say that a lot of the book, maybe plot scenarios and things that happen, maybe is it kind of it's a novel, but it's maybe kind of a little memoirish, maybe?
Yes, you have it's a good point. It's not so much a memoir because, as I say, I was 15 years younger than in 1960 than what Liv was in 1960. But I lived through all that history. I lived through all the politics. So, yeah, but definitely I deliberately have intertwined real figures like Hendrik Verwoerd, the president, Nelson Mandela in jail, Robert Sobukwe, the leader of the resistance, other figures, Harold Macmillan, the British Prime Minister, Chaim, what was his name? The president of what became Israel would come to talk to the Jewish population in the earlier days, around the 1900s. Chaim Weiszman. So,
okay.
Yeah, so that's also of great interest, is that how you intermingle actual history and historical figures with your novel.
And it's got romance in it too, as well. First love,
oh yes,
lust, betrayal, true love, despair, elation, cruelty, evil, hope, and fulfillment. That's Fridays around here at the Chris Voss Show, by the way, once we start drinking.
Sounds like a juicy one, right?
A lot of women love these books, kind of beach read-ish, things that they can enjoy, the romance novels. I think we had a few hundred romance novels on the show, and they love them. They eat these books up. So great.
Right.
Is there any future to this particular characters in this book? Maybe a future book series coming out of it? Maybe
the book is shaped that when she's much older, in her 80s, she looks back on all her secrets and all her life and the whole family saga. And some of the younger members of the family ask her to speak to an oral historian. The actual novel is she relating the history of the family and also her own story at that one year in 1960.
Oh.
So that was, that's how I structured the novel between the two time periods, which works very well. But the whole, I don't know, I can't remember the first part of your question, if you don't mind.
If there was going to be any, sometimes people do a book and then it becomes so popular and the people have the characters, they do as sequels. Oh,
yeah, that was the point. She is, the book ends with her as this older woman who's 88 and will die shortly. So no, but I have sometimes thought of writing something about her from the point of view of her 2 children. Oh. And they would now be in their 60s or 70s. And truly, I think the book has done so well, and because it's so real. And I left with my family, and we left in 1984. So I haven't actually lived through the whole transition from the white government to the black government. And I think that one of the strengths of the book is that it's my lived history. Not mine, but I lived through that history.
Yeah. It's quite amazing, all the different things that are out there and variations of what you can do. Tell us about, now I think you've written another book. You've written 6 books. What's the book that maybe is pending coming out?
It's not finished yet, but that is a memoir. I am writing a memoir because I've had the great good fortune to have an absolutely incredible life. I've got wonderful children, and it's, again, it's all family. And I think sharing what it was like to be a white person growing up in that society is relevant. And then crossing the ocean to come to another continent, which sort of echoes what my ancestors did when they left Lithuania to come to South Africa. We left South Africa to come to the US, and when I look at families, which I've done a lot, this often seems that generational patterns repeat themselves. And that's what I've tried to feature in the book. But no, so there's no sequel as far as at the moment. I do have a vague idea to write the story as a fiction of my mother-in-law, who was an incredible woman who grew up in Europe and spoke 7 languages and had to flee Hitler in 1939.
Yeah.
Yes, but that would mean a lot of research for me, and I just don't know if I want to do all that work.
Oh, yeah.
After a life of work, I don't know if I want to still do more work.
More work? Yeah. Tell us about some of the other books you've written as well. I think you've done one on...
Sorry.
Go ahead.
My first published book was, when we came to the States, was called Inside Apartheid. And it received, I spoke with Terry Gross. I was on the McNeil Lear show. I wrote essays for the New York Times. I mean, it just everything just fell in my lap. It was quite amazing. And it became a bestseller, and that put me over the top. And I thought, wow, this is an easy game. Why does everybody say it's so hard to be a writer in America? I learned that for many, many lean years afterwards. I did write 2 books on the Enneagram, which is a personality model.
Oh, yeah.
And I adapted one for teaching, because that's another great interest of mine, is education. And then I adapted the other one for parenting, for parents. And I taught workshops all over the world, actually. That was when I sort of first came here, and it became a very interesting passion that I had. And then I went back into the classroom. I was just thinking the other day, I've taught in township schools in South Africa. I've taught an African night school to some wonderful younger people from Soweto who came after work. I mean, to come to what we called African night school at the university to learn, like I was teaching English, and the dedication and the motivation to succeed was amazing to me, because they'd have to go home, sleep for a few hours, and get up at 5 o'clock and get on the train and go back to work. And then I've taught in one of the best schools in America, which is Milton Academy. And that was a wonderful experience where I then workshopped basically, not only that, but a great deal of books which were in my 4th book, which was Reading Matters, which seems to be having a little bit of a renaissance at the moment. Reading Matters is applying philosophical principles to novels, because I really believe that we become what we read. And that's the basis of that. So
we become what we read. I like that. That should be in a coffee cup.
Yeah. It's called Reading Matters. And it's, let me take moral responsibility, that one concept. And the book opens with an essay by Primo Levi, who was an Italian philosopher, and he was in one of the camps during the Holocaust. And, he came out and described, when he came out, he wrote all the experiences of being in the camps. And that's, how responsible are you for the people around you and next to you? So moral responsibility is big. And then I have Virginia Woolf and probably a lot of names that people would recognize. But yes, if I can tout that book, I think people would really enjoy it.
We become what we read. I love that, because you see a lot of different things for that in the universe. Anything more you want to talk about or promote while we have you on the show? The one book you did, Know Your Parenting Personality, seems like a good way to, self-actualize and get to know yourself.
Yes, the Enneagram is a fascinating system. Ennea is Greek for 9, and gram means a graph. So it's a model. And it shows that each of us defaults into one of 9 positions on the circle of the Enneagram. And I don't want to get into some people go down the line of the mysticism and where did it originate, but I'm just interested in the psychology, which is very good.
Yeah.
So I thought, parenting, it started in the classroom because I realized that my Enneagram type was not in sync with everybody I was teaching. And therefore, I just went down the route of, okay, parents always try and impose their personality on their kids, and that doesn't work because the kids are of different personalities. So both those Enneagram books, I think, are very valuable and have also received, I'm happy to say, some fairly good, support.
That's wonderful. And then I see another book here, and it looks like another novel that you have that came out before.
Yes.
I think the other one. Tell us about that one. What's the title of that one?
Layla's Gift.
Yeah, Layla's Gift. There we go.
Yeah, Layla's Gift is now in a second edition because I changed the beginning third of the book. So it's now called The Awakening of Daya Sharma. And it's basically about this New Yorker journalist who goes to India. She's biracial. She has an Indian father and American mother, a white mother. And she finds her family in India, and then she's convinced to go to an ashram. And then I just quickly, so she has never meditated, she's never done, but it's all about, as I said earlier in the show, I'm all about sharing. So I became a big meditator, and so I've put her in there and her slow spiritual awakening. And then she comes back to the States. She goes to this ashram and meets this yogi master. And then, now she has to apply what she's learned in America.
Oh.
So it's not just, bells and whistles yet. She's become a meditator and a spiritual person. She has to come back and really try and grapple with what does this all mean and what can she do with it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so you can see the pattern, Chris, that each time I've done something in my life, I've tried to write about it for others to be helpful to others.
Why do you feel that you're that way? Why are there people like you and me that, like, when we learn something, when we, have something that we feel we can share and enhance other people's lives with, why is it that we're motivated to do that? And some people just don't care, maybe. Is there?
Yeah.
What's behind that?
For me, it's a question I've asked myself all my life. What is my drive? It's a form of activism, right?
Yeah.
And I've tried, to answer that. Where does that come from?
Yeah.
And I can only think it's my personality now that I know the Enneagram and the psychology of personality so well, is that I was born like that. I mean, I'm just born to be a leader. I'm born to be someone who wants to share. I love building coalitions. I'm an entrepreneur. I love to, to put together committees and lead this and lead that and nonprofits, organizations. I mean, I helped to start the first Black taxi union in South Africa. That's a whole story.
Oh, wow.
And then I had my political work, which was, again, it's trying to share my ideals of justice and, human rights. And then, of course, from a very young age, I was a journalist. That, again, is another form of, what you're doing.
Yeah.
Another form of sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, sharing the knowledge and stories and everything else. I mean, your life is so much richer. I mean, some people are like, yeah, no one cares about what I think. Yeah, is anyone really going to care about my book if I write about whatever I think? And people do. There's people out there that will identify. And sometimes your voice, your message is the only person that can really reach that person. I mean, I don't know if it's only that way, but it was sold to me a long time ago when I was having trouble editing my book. I was like, just throw all this stuff out the window. I give up. The editing's a nightmare, right? And I was just like, throw it all away. And someone who was an author, they got me on a webcam call and they said, look, there's someone out here who needs your book. Probably more people than that, but there's at least one person out there who needs your book, and you're the only person who's going to get through to them. You're the only person who's going to help them, and you've got to write this book. And if you don't do it for yourself, you've got to do it for them. And I was like, wow, that's pretty darn powerful. And, I've had millions of stories over the last 20 years or so being online or whatever it is on social media in 16 years. And, there's lots of people written me. Something I just wrote that had no intention of saving them from suicide. 2 people wrote me and said I was going to kill myself today. I had it scheduled and ready to go. And something you said flipped on me, and so I've decided to give it a go and stay on the planet. And so, yeah, you just never know the impact you have in people's lives. And the great thing about a book is it's so expansive in its reach. You'll probably never meet that person, but every now and then someone's gonna bump into you and go, "Hey, man, that changed my life," and you're like, "Wow, that's cool. That's really awesome."
Yes, it's the old adage that you're the only person who can write your story.
It's true.
And if yes, it's very rewarding when you get the feedback that you really touched me, you really made me think. And even today in 2026, when there's so much AI and so many opportunities to just get knowledge and information very superficially, there's an equal amount of people who still want books. They still want to go deeper. They still want to read. And I mean, I find it's amazing that you have this discrepancy that we have people who don't think, they just want to enjoy themselves and have fun. And the others who can't afford to think. I mean, they can't literally, they can't afford to think. They've just got to put one foot in front of the other every day to survive. And then, then there's still a large amount of people who are critical thinkers. That's my rallying call at the moment, is that we have to teach critical thinking. We have to teach kids to question, to formulate their own answers, to have the courage to change their minds if they find out something they've thought was solid that proves not to be. So if we don't have critical thinkers, basically this country is doomed. I'm sorry to be so pragmatic, but it's true. I mean, I really do think that we're becoming, many of us are becoming sheep, and it's better to be an outlier.
Let me ask you this. I don't know if you want to comment on this, but one thing I found really interesting is our current regime in 2026 here in America is trying to deport, a lot of people. And interesting enough, they're importing and funding the import of South American white ranchers to Idaho. Are you familiar with that?
No, I haven't heard that one. I've heard about the white South African farmers who don't want to come.
Who don't want to come. Yeah. Yeah, they're resettling a lot of these people in Idaho from South Africa. And if you're familiar with what's going on in Idaho, there's a huge white nationalist, KKK, which is white nationalism is rebranded KKK. And, a lot of that falls in the same bucket as apartheid and the Nazis. And their belief systems, unfortunately, of racism and hate and xenophobia and anti-Semitism. But they've built enclaves in Idaho, which are very disturbing, where they try and make them whites only. I think they're starting to have some legal problems.
Here we go again.
Yeah, here we go again. And you're like, what year is this? We're supposed to fix this in the 60s. I mean, we didn't, but we made some progress. And then, I remember going through the apartheid stuff. I think it was the 80s or 90s when I was growing up. I think it was in the 80s, the apartheid battle. And, and you're just like, we just repeat the ugliness of history and think that somehow it's going to end better. I don't know.
Yes, I did read a book on what's going on up in Idaho with all the guns they have and how they're collecting them and putting them underground and doing this and that. And it's a whole army up there. Really. Yeah,
it's really out of control. I'd be interested if you look into some more as to why they're doing that. I mean, I think on the face of it, it's pretty obvious they're trying to create a white nationalist capital, KKK capital there, if they haven't already. But importing the South African farmers, and of course, the Trump regime claims that it was, these guys are persecuted in South Africa. They had their farms taken away from them or something and given to black people. Or I don't know what went on, because you can't trust whatever they say. But yeah, it's interesting that they're bringing him here, yet we're deporting everyone else just from a foreign country at this point.
From my point of view, which is quite a what's the word I want to say, validated. The white, because I still have contact with particularly journalists in South Africa. Yes, there were a few I think you've got to go back to the Rhodesian experience where the freedom fighters, as rewards from Mugabe, once they won and got rid of all the white settlers, that he split up all the farms. and gave the land back to the people. And now it was one of the richest countries in Africa. It's now one of the poorest.
Oh, wow.
Because of mismanagement of the farms. And so I think that's where the idea came from in South Africa. But there were relatively few white farmers who were chased off their land or murdered, all that. Where Trump got this from was from his friend Elon Musk, who's a South African and of the white nationalist ilk. And he persuaded him that the white South African farmers want to come.
Wow.
And I saw several reports which said that just a handful, all the rest is we don't talk the language, we don't like the politics, we're not Americans, we're Africans. They've been, their families have probably been in South Africa for 300 to 400 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I wouldn't want to come here either, regardless of what country I was from. I'm all, hey, we should deport bad folks that come here that weren't citizens and they made money when they weren't citizens here when they shouldn't have. So let's deport Elon Musk first. Right. I'm all for that. Let's do that. He evidently, to my understanding and what I've read in data, he came here and was doing business when he shouldn't have been doing business, because you're technically not allowed when you first immigrate here and you haven't got your citizenship set up and stuff.
We talking about Elon?
Yes.
Oh, yes. What a disaster.
Yeah. And now he's getting everybody out of his way that can compete with him, I guess. So pretty interesting. As we go out, give people a final pitch out to pick up your book and get to know you better. Reach out on your website.coms, et cetera, et cetera.
Sorry, did you ask?
As we go out, Janet, give us your final pitch out to people to pick up your book and .coms to look you up on the interwebs.
Yes, you'll find all my books on my website at janetlevine.com. And I'd be very happy to, if you want to get hold of me I'm always answering people's readers' questions and emails, and I like getting comments. So take a look, see what's up.
Check out all of our books and all that good stuff. Wonderful stuff there. Thank you very much, Janet, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. I've enjoyed chatting with you very much.
It's been wonderful to have you as well. Thank you for all the work you're doing and raising the bar, letting people know better, and of course, speaking out for the downtrodden. We're all, I think it's really important for us to all realize that we're all stewards of each other on this planet. We're all human beings. It doesn't matter what flag, it doesn't matter whatever sort of device you want to put on to separating us from being human beings. We're all human beings. And
that's right. We're all in the human family.
Yeah. And it's all our jobs to lift each other, Rising tide lifts all boats. When you think in scarcity and you're trying to, just cut a part out for yourself, you end up with little or to nothing. And abundance thinking is really the way to think about it. And that's what built, America and a lot of great countries around the world was, they welcome people, they integrated with them well, and there's no one person on this planet that's got all the great ideas. Even Elon Musk screws up a lot. He just lost another battle with ChatGPT in court. But, you've got to have the soul of a nation or the whole of a nation in its combined intelligence can make it successful. And that's really where we excelled and where we struggle now. Because we don't recognize that anymore, and we're interested in scarcity, and everyone's trying to get their own, as opposed to let's build and raise each other up together. So that's a great message for today. Thank you very much for coming on, Janet. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss and all those places. Pick up her book wherever fine books are sold. Liv's Secrets by Janet Levine. Thanks to her for coming on the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.